Hello, everybody, and welcome to Heartlight Vedic Astrology. In today's talk, I was going to discuss Virgo Constellation, or Kanya Rashi, as it's known as in Sanskrit. This talk is from a Vedic astrology or Jyotish perspective, so ancient Indian astrology that's more than 5,000 years old. So let's take a look at Virgo. Just a few words beforehand. If you're new to Vedic astrology, Jyotish are my videos. All my teaching videos on the subject or my concepts playlist, they can be found there. Wherever you see a little asterisk in one of my talks, that means there's a teaching video on that topic if you'd like to learn more. My channel is all about playlists. I'm pretty good about organizing my videos into different topic areas through playlists. So, for example, I have a Constellations Rashi's playlist, Planets Graha's playlist, Houses Bhavas playlist, and there are others. If you'd like to learn astrology, excuse me, by looking at different famous birth charts, I would check out my birth chart archive list 2024 video. I'll be updating that soon. But that video has a list of a lot of the videos or famous birth charts, whether it's famous people, places, or moments in time that I've analyzed on the channel. In the video, you can find them in. If you're new, kind of a newbie to all of this, here's a list of the videos I would watch first to get more of a foundation, so you get more out of these talks. And North, South, and East Indian style charts. I do cover Western style charts in those as well. Introduction to navigating a birth chart. The lagna, also known as the ascendant, rising sign, first house, planetary aspects, introduction to the constellations, Rashis, constellation or Rashi categories, natural benefic and malefic planets or grahas, and nakshatras or lunar mansions. And then if you've been following along and maybe you missed a few videos, my newest teaching videos are Introduction to Planetary Periods or the Dasha sequence, Chandra-Mangala Yoga, Moon-Mars combination, and mantras for Rahu, Ketu, and the eclipses or Grahan, since we have eclipses coming up this month. So let's start talking about Rashis generally, or constellations. There is actually a difference between constellations and signs. So if you're coming from Western astrology, they usually talk about signs. Constellations are based on fixed stars. So this is what you can actually see in the sky with your own eyes. Signs are actually a little bit more abstract. The reason being, if you look at this diagram, the sun is in the middle here, and the earth is revolving around the sun, and then revolving around both of those is this parade of constellations, okay, called zodiac, okay. And so the thing is, the zodiac moves 360 degrees almost every solar year, okay? But there's a little bit of difference between the zodiac and the ecliptic. The ecliptic is the path of the sun. So it's less than a degree difference every year. But the thing is, over hundreds and thousands of years, that difference between again the constellations, the fixed star constellations, and the signs, because the signs are updated based on the solar calendar, not on the fixed stars. So at this point, there's actually about a 23.5 degree difference between like what Western astrologers consider Scorpio sign, for example, and what Vedic astrologers consider Scorpio constellation. Okay, that's why if somebody says, like, I'm a Scorpio coming from a Western tradition, 2/3 of the time they will actually, and they're telling you their sun position when they say that, 2/3 of the time their sun will actually be in the constellation before it in Libra. Okay, so each sign has 30 degrees. So 23.5 degrees is, about 2/3 or more, 70% of the sign. Okay, so that's a big difference between constellations and signs. The other thing to know about constellations generally is that when we're assessing a house, for example, and we've got planets in there, and we've got the constellation, the planets are more influential than the constellations. Okay, not that the constellations are insignificant, but it's more like the constellations are the backdrop or the stage, and the planets are the players or the actors. Okay, so it makes a big difference. Like, is the backdrop romantic, Renaissance period backdrop, or is the backdrop, like a slum in some big city, right? I mean, that influences things. So just keep that in mind, okay, as we talk about Virgo. All right, so here's Virgo. This is the sixth constellation of the zodiac. Virgo is Kanya in Sanskrit, and again, constellation is Rashi. So Virgo is ruled by the planet Mercury. Mercury is known as Buddha in Sanskrit, and Mercury is a Rajasa Graha, meaning it's a very active planet. Okay. When we start talking about things like Rajasic, that usually comes in a trio of descriptors. One is sattvic, the second is rajasic, and the third is tamasic. So sattvic has an energy of being more kind of spiritual or high-minded. Rajasic is more of like the active, mundane, worldly type activity, like having a to-do list and checking things off. And then tamasic means that there's some level of inertia, like things are pretty steady, static, maybe stuck even. Okay. So as a planet, Mercury is rajasic. The thing though is that Virgo as a constellation is sattvic. Okay. So we're dealing with those two energies on different levels. Now, getting back to Mercury here, Mercury is a dual planet. Okay. Mercury is also tridoshic. So if you do any sort of like Ayurveda, traditional Indian medicine, there are three doshas or imbalances, primary imbalances. One is Vata, the second is Pitta, the third is Kapha. They are loosely translated as wind, fire, and earth. Okay. So when Mercury is tridoshic, it means it's actually balanced between wind and fire and earth. So that's kind of nice. It also means that Mercury can be easily influenced by other planets that are around it. So since Mercury's balanced, if you have a lot of fire planets around it, Mercury will become more fiery. If you have a lot of windy planets around it, Mercury will become more windy. Okay. So the other thing about Mercury is it's very much about the nervous system. The nervous system is probably the primary kind of system of the body and person that's kind of active or obvious. And so Mercury is all about the logical mind, the analytical mind. Mercury is also detail oriented and can be organized, okay? Especially when we're talking about Virgo. So keep that in mind. So Virgo as a constellation is a dual earth sign. So again, we're getting some mixed energies here. So there's going to be some contrast. Earth sign is going to tell us that this, Virgos generally speaking are fairly practical in nature, more than being like an air sign like Gemini, which is also ruled by Mercury. Air signs are predominantly more like idea. People are more interested in like ideas and thinking and abstraction, which is not really Virgo style. Okay. So when we have a dual earth sign or Dosva Baba Prithvi in Sanskrit, this is going to be some, especially when somebody is a Virgo rising, ascendant, first house, or lagna, all different names for the same thing. They're going to have like a dual, like kind of a mixed but dual tangible orientation. Okay. And again, as a constellation, it's sattvic. So there's some high mindedness here, in terms of Virgo. Um, so also, since it's ruled by Mercury, this sign tends to have like an orientation towards like animals, as opposed to minerals or vegetables. So sentient beings, okay? There tends to be that orientation. Symbol of Virgo, it's similar to that in Western astrology. A little bit different though. So this is a maiden, so a young woman, who's usually in a boat crossing the water, carrying fire in one hand and wheat in the other. So when we're talking about wheat and fire, these are things that like nurture, give us warmth and nourishment. And then the maiden symbolizes like sort of purity and kind of young, sort of youthful innocence. And the boat crossing the water is about moving to, better places, essentially. Okay. So when we put all this together, we've got nurturing energy, potentially rescuing energy, organizing, and purity. Now, Virgo is both the exaltation and Swa sign, so for Mercury. Swa meaning that a planet's in its own sign. So when Mercury is in Virgo, it's not only Swa, which is true for any planet when any planet's in its own sign, but Virgo is unusual in that it's also the exaltation sign for Mercury. So especially when Mercury is in Virgo, it's especially strong. Okay. Now, there are three nakshatras. Excuse me. Sorry. There are three nakshatras or lunar mansions. in Virgo, or almost 3. So if you're not familiar, nakshatras or lunar mansions, there's about 27 of them. Every night the moon passes through a different one. And after about 27 nights, we have a lunar month. Okay. Now each of these nakshatras has a different energy associated with them. So in Virgo, we have Uttar Falguni is the first one. Now, most of Uttar Falguni is in Virgo. Nakshatras are divided into 4 padas or feet, so 4 sections, even sections. And the first one is in Leo, the constellation before Virgo. 3 out of 4 padas or sections are in Virgo, Uttar Falguni. Uttar Falguni is symbolized by a hammock. And the nakshatra before it is Purva Falguni, which is also symbolized by a hammock. But Uttar Falguni differs from Purva Falguni in that Purva Falguni is like really about enjoyment, like swinging in a hammock, like on a tropical island, somebody handing you a nice frosty drink, watching the sunset. So it's all about enjoyment and pleasure and the finer things of life. Uttar Falguni has this additional energy of having like a purpose to it. Okay, so again, having a goal. So again, this is already bringing up this like rajasic energy of like, getting things done in the real world. Also, this being an earth sign, right? Again, usually Virgo people are very interested in tangible results. Okay. And seeing tangible, structures or, again, outcomes, more than something abstract. So that's the first lunar mansion in Virgo. The second one is Hasta, and that's completely in Virgo. Hasta is symbolized by hand. So, literally, as you can see the picture here, um, usually when people have their ascendant in Hasta, or they have a lot of important planets in Hasta, they can literally be pretty grabby or hands-on, in general. And so already we have, we're having several layers or confluence of, Virgos being, very tangibly oriented, being very active, being very practical. And then now, especially when Hasta planets are the ascendants in Hasta, we get even more of that energy of, literally getting the hands involved. Okay. Then the last nakshatra in Virgo is Chitra. And half of Chitra, so 2 out of 4 padas are in Virgo. The other 2 are in the next constellation of Libra. So Chitra is symbolized by a gemstone. And so gemstone's a cut gemstone. So a cut gemstone has all these different facets. And that nakshatra is all about like structure and architecture. So again, we're getting this energy of structure, architecture, organization. Yeah. So again, depending on which of these it falls into, you get more of the different energies of sort of on the base level of Virgo coming through. And again, if we look at this picture here, very detail oriented, practical. I think they're painting a table or something like that, looks like. Maybe not. But they literally are hands on. And so, as we'll discuss more, Virgo, when people have important placements in Virgo, or maybe they're a Virgo ascendant, they can be artisans, or they might be interested in like handicrafts and things like that. Doing them. Okay, so Virgo on a more kind of personal basis, since it's an even number sign, number 6, all even number signs have a feminine type of energy. Now, this doesn't have to do with, gender or sex identity or anything like that, but it's just kind of this sort of yin-yang energy that, is used in Jyotish or Vedic astrology. Okay, so there's this kind of energy at being a feminine constellation, having kind of soft and smooth and gentle, as opposed to like rough and rugged and potentially cruel. Okay. As far as height, again, depends on what planets are in Virgo, but especially if somebody was a Virgo rising or Kanya lagna, they might be tall. They typically are tall. In terms of bodily constitution or dosha, Virgo or Kanya is a Vata dosha, so they tend to have high levels of wind, as far as Ayurveda, traditional Indian medicine is concerned. So Vata can be related to like symptoms that come and go. It can be like lightness of the mind, lightness of the body. It can be like pains that come and go. This can be anxiety. This can be, loneliness. This can be feelings of overwhelm, um, dryness, the different sorts of things. I mean, you'd have to get into a whole lecture about Ayurveda, but just to give you some idea. Now, as far as body parts related to Virgo, in the natural zodiac, where the first constellation of Aries is placed in the first house, since Virgo's number 6 here, Virgo in the natural zodiac rules the 6th house of the natural horoscope. Okay. So what that means is that it represents the mid GI, basically from the stomach down to the colon, thereabouts. Okay. Or above the colon. So, although we'll see in this list here, a more specific list, that, colon can be involved with Virgo. And the reason why is I don't think it's because of Virgo itself, because anatomically Virgo relates to the midgut. But I think the reason why the colon is getting involved in the list of health issues is because the colon is the seat of Vata in the body. So the first way to start treating wind, or Vata imbalance, is to treat the colon in Ayurveda. Okay. So let's look at that list. So as far as health concerns that might crop up with somebody who's like a Virgo rising, or they have strong placements in Virgo, well, absorption, diet, purification, and then again, digestion below stomach and above colon. So again, that kind of gets to that, back to the symbol of Virgo of this, young woman crossing some water with wheat in the hand and fire in the other, right? So wheat being, a staple, and then fire being the ability to transform that staple into something like bread. And then here we go. So diverticulitis, which again is a problem, inflammation of the colon, and dysentery, which is also a problem of the colon. They both can create problems with, again, absorption. Well, not so much absorption at that point in the colon, but digestion, but especially in the colon. But yeah, you can see that there's going to be a lot of GI issues potentially. Food allergies, that's another possibility. Now, again, food allergies, that's picking up this kind of like sensitive nature that Virgos have, okay? Because again, them being a dual earth sign, uh, they like structure. They do well in structure. They're good at structuring and ordering things and organizing things. So the thing is, when things are out of order, even a little bit, because they're detail oriented, that can really throw Virgos off. Okay. So food allergies, again, that's usually a dietary concern. Delicacy in general of either mentally, emotionally, physically. Okay. Virgos tend to be, a bit again soft, not just because they're number 6 and even Rashi here, but again, I think that's mostly the Vata nature. And again, they're so usually concerned or needing of, in certain ways, structure, that when they don't have that, and again, a lot of life, can be chaotic, and that can really throw them off. Hypochondria is another one. So hypochondria, again, there's a sensitivity involved there, typically mentally, emotionally, physically. But the other thing is, like, on hypochondria, this is a word used in Western, medicine, but hypochondria might be, like when you translate it to Ayurveda, traditional Indian medicine, might be this sense of Vata, where it's like symptoms that come and go. Like my Vata patients and things like that, they'll come in one time, with certain issues, usually a few. We deal with those. You assume they're going to come back and most of it's going to get cleared up, but then they come in with a whole new list of issues. Okay. And so it's like, and then they said, oh, this cleared up. But then like 2 or 3, sessions later, they're like, oh, it's back. And so you feel like you're just sort of like, playing that cup game, or something like, or like whack-a-mole, these different games where you're just like moving things around. So, again, in Western medicine, hypochondria is a little bit more psych-oriented. I'm not sure that's I'm not sure that's exactly true. At least that's not the full picture from an Ayurvedic point of view. Okay, so imbalance of the liver. The liver is important because the liver is one of the main organs for detoxification. And we've been talking about purity for Virgos. Okay. And also gaits. So again, if you can't walk, that's a major structural problem, right? You're going to be asymmetrical, or the structure in general, if you can't walk at all, like the structure, the main structure of the body, especially like the hips and the legs. I mean, that's the base structure. If that's off, then it throws everything off in the body typically. Okay, so again, we're talking about detoxification and structure, general structure of the body here. Intestinal parasites. This is very specific. It was on my list. I'm not exactly sure why parasites, because there can be, a ton of different intestinal problems. I'm not exactly sure why parasites. Maybe that's another form, like maybe that's a biological impurity. Nutritional deficiencies, that's a possibility. So again, if they're not absorbing well, if they're on a really strict allergen diet, that can result in nutritional deficiencies. I would even say going the other way of like eating disorders, because again, they can be so detail oriented, structure oriented, and especially when things are out of order in their life and they're starting to, wind vata is starting to kick up and create feelings of overwhelm, excuse me, then they might try to hyper structure or hyper focus on whatever they are able to structure and control. Okay. Yeah. Also hygiene, that might be a problem, again, if things are out of order for them. But they, generally speaking, if Virgos are, well balanced, they might be, almost super hygienic. And it might even lead to something like OCD, where they're, again, hyper focused on having that process of like washing things, cleaning things themselves, their house, whatever, their car. And again, it provides a structure especially when other things are not well ordered. So they might lean on that too much. Potentially also autistic people on the autism spectrum might potentially have I don't know, more likelihood of being Virgo. I think they can also be Geminis as well, because again, Mercury also represents the peripheral nerves. So it depends on, you know, the state of Virgo, which house Virgo's in, and also again, the state and condition of Mercury. But when Mercury's, imbalance, that could lead to something like autism, because again, a lot of people with autism are very sensitive, hypersensitive to external stimuli. That's why they might eat something like what they call the beige diet, where even different colors of food will, overstimulate them. Yeah. And then the other thing I found with Virgo, I didn't see this on any list, but I found with Virgo is that a lot of Virgos can be hypercritical of self and others. And this kind of gets into the sensitivity piece here, and also the hygiene piece here, and the structure piece here. Like, when little things are out of order, it's kind of a big deal, for Virgos. And so that can be a problem, again, with their relationship with self and potentially others. When nothing is ever good enough, or nothing's settled enough, or nothing's organized enough, because in a lot of ways that's just not the way not the way that a lot of life is for a lot of people. So then if we're talking about fruitful and barren, again, these are old traditional terms used in Ayurveda, or not Ayurveda, Jyotish. But this is a general proclivity to have children or not. Okay. And Virgos are less likely actually to be interested in having children. I think due to some of these things, like kids are generally messy, And so if they had kids, they might have like one or two, and then they might be, really quite structured or try to structure, a child and the way they move, through life. Because in a way, that's kind of what Virgos need and their orientation. Okay. We'll talk a little bit more about that, I think, on the next slide. Okay, so what happens if we actually have a Virgo or Kanya, as the ascendant rising sign first house? The ascendant rising sign first house, it's also known as lagna in Sanskrit. In the little diagram on the right here, we have a North Indian style chart. And that diamond in the top middle that's colored in, that's the first house, also the rising sign ascendant. There's a little 6 in the bottom corner. That little 6 in the bottom corner refers to the sixth constellation, which is Virgo or Kanya. So, so what happens? Like, are there some general features we might tend to think, based on somebody just being a Virgo lagna, okay? Not knowing about anything else, like not knowing where any planets are, not knowing the condition or strength or weakness of any planets or how they're all lined up or not or whatever. Just being a Virgo or Kanya, rising lagna, okay? So the lagnatia is again Mercury. So there is this kind of dual nature. But uh, there can be this kind of shyness. Again, this kind of gets to this kind of maiden, the symbol of the maiden, like a little bit less, maybe mature, a little bit less developed, and in that way, like not so, let's say, maybe completely set within themselves, or maybe not having a lot of life experience potentially. Like there's a little bit of innocence and naivete and shyness associated with the Virgos. And again, this isn't all of them. I mean, I know some Virgos who are just wild, but that's usually, but the ones that I know that are kind of wild, it's because their Mercury is, you know, um, swimming in a sea of malevolent planets and it's debilitated and those kind of things. So not all Virgos, okay. Although those people are still, detail oriented and hypercritical. Okay, so but these are the things that are typically on lists for Virgos, okay? If they're um, you know, fairly balanced, okay? Because again, they're not generally aggressive because this is a even numbered Rashi here, okay? Practical, we've been talking about, that's the earthliness, detail oriented because of Mercury. Again, organized, logical, they're really into logistics, how things work, planners, project managers. So especially when you get these sorts of things, like I can imagine like a wedding planner with all those like infinite details and stuff that need to be planned out. Virgo, would probably be pretty good at doing that kind of job. Again, perfectionist because there's a sensitivity and the detail orientation. Again, there can be this innocence, but not always. Okay. So again, when I'm talking about these things, these are things you might consider as a first pass for a Virgo rising lagna. But you have to check out the rest of the chart, okay, to see if that makes sense for a particular person. So the second and ninth house was houses for a Virgo rising are ruled by Venus. Now the thing is, Venus, the moon. Sorry. Um, Sorry, I'm having trouble talking today. I think it's because the eclipses are coming. And we're getting into Mercury retrograde at the same time. And so when either of those is going on, it's typically more difficult for me to do these videos. And especially when they're both going on, it's like, good luck, getting through the video. So hang in there with me, if you will. I'm trying to hang in there with myself. So anyway, Mercury and Venus are friends, friendly signs to each other, friendly planets to each other, okay? So that means that Venus, as the Lord of the second house, is going to be strong. And Venus also rules the ninth house of higher education. So usually Virgos are interested in classical and or higher learning. And the ninth house also indicates things like religion, or spirituality. Now, because of their structured nature, not always, but they might be more interested in a structured organizational religion more than like a free, flowing spirituality type situation. Okay. Sort of reciprocally, though, Venus is debilitated in Virgo, lagna. So this might be a bit of a problem, meaning that Venus, an emotional planet and a social grace planet, um, is not well functioning or weak, or well functioning in the lagna. Okay, so this could mean head over heart issues. This could be that the Virgos kind of think too much and are too practical, and maybe not putting, relationships or sort of more, um, heart-based matters in the forefront all the time, or there at least can be a conflict. Okay. Then the third and eighth houses for Virgo lagna are ruled by Mars. Okay. Now, Mars is an enemy of Mercury, and the other way, Mars is not a friend. I think it's either a neutral. I can't remember right now. Either a neutral or enemy sign. Anyway, no, it's not an enemy sign. The enemy sign for Mercury is Moon, so it's a neutral sign. Mars is a neutral sign for Mercury. Okay. So the third house relates to siblings and neighbors. Okay. So there can be issues there. And the eighth house represents deep psychology. So Mars is an erratic, kind of unusual, rebellious planet. So there can be those sorts of energies, unusual, erratic energies with siblings, neighbors, and thoughts as well. Okay. Then let's see. The fourth and seventh houses are ruled by Jupiter. The fourth house, let's see, what is that going to be? 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, so the fourth house is going to be Sagittarius. That's going to be pretty nice. So again, there might be interest in higher education again. So Virgos can often be, fairly well educated. The thing though is that the seventh house for a Virgo is going to be Pisces. Okay, now Mercury, the ruling planet for the chart, is debilitated in Pisces. So this may indicate relationship issues. So we're seeing, like, again, head over heart, relationship issues, there can be problems here. Okay. Um, so the fifth and sixth houses for Virgo are ruled by Saturn. Saturn, again, tends to indicate obstacles, delays. And again, I already mentioned Virgo is considered to be a barren sign, not because of the fifth house, but just because when somebody has strong Mercury and or Saturn placements in their chart, they can be less likely to be interested in children. Okay. So the fifth house in a Virgo rising chart is ruled by Saturn. So again, there might be obstacles and delays there. The other thing is that Saturn is going to be, what is it? The sixth house is like daily schedules and things like that. And that's going to be ruled by Aquarius, which is ruled by Saturn. And Aquarius is a fixed air sign. So this is somebody who's going to be, again, like pretty structured, organized, maybe even rigid potentially in their daily schedule. Again, there is that tendency towards structure, but there's also, I think, a need for Virgos to have structure to feel settled. Okay. Yeah. So they're going to be, again, a fairly scheduled person typically. Then the 10th house here, Lord, that's going to be Gemini. That's ruled by Mercury. Again, that's their ruling planet. So again, work, interest in ideas and details for work is going to be strong. There's going to be a lot of energy there. The 11th house is ruled by Moon. And again, this is the enemy sign or enemy planet for Mercury. And the 11th house is related to things like income, but also clubs, group society, socializing. So there can be difficulty with relationships. Okay. Maybe income as well. Although, again, the second house, which is ruled by Venus, is strong. Um, there might be like assets here, which again would make sense for an earth sign because they're going to want to accumulate things, practical things to again make them feel settled and secure. Then the 12th house lord is Sun, and Sun is a friendly sign for Mercury, so it may be that they prefer to isolate or work in isolated places. That may just be like their comfort zone, because again, people, different kinds of people, all over the place doing all kinds of things that can be messy, right? Okay, so then I have below here some information from two different Shastra classical texts in Jyotish. One is a Brihat Parsha or Hora, which is the older text, this is specifically chapter 4, and the other one is the Phaladipika, chapter 9. Okay, so just to see what these older texts have to say, see how this correlates or not. Most of the time it correlates, sometimes it doesn't. I'm not really sure why, but again, I'm just giving you the complete list here. So as you look through charts yourself, you can make up your own mind about what you're seeing, as far as charts go. So from BPH, we have Parvatiya, which means resides in hills. This is kind of interesting. I don't necessarily think of hills, but somebody who resides in the hills is somebody who isolates, right? I mean, they're not like in a city, which is where Gemini people tend to like. They like all that, thought and overstimulation. I mean, they can be overstimulated as well, but they like love it. Whereas like Virgos might shy away from it. So I'm getting from this Parvatiya descriptor here that again there might be a tendency to isolate. Strong in the day. I'm not really sure why. Maybe because day, like noon is related to 10th house, and the 10th house is Gemini, and Gemini is also ruled by Mercury. Maybe that. Okay, the other thing is that Virgo is a head rising constellation, meaning that the head portion of the woman comes in first as opposed to her feet. And this is an auspicious thing, so I'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. Medium-sized body. Well, this contradicts a little bit because on the previous slide, I think I said Virgos tend to be tall, but in either case, they're not like small, right? So medium to large size, maybe. Biped. So again, that relates to against humans and sentient beings and stuff like that. So that's what's kind of interesting too, is that like they're sensitive and they have an orientation towards humans, but there's also this difficulty that comes up in relating to them. Maybe because they're so, refined and organized and sensitive, and other people are running rampant around them. Well, maybe that's the issue. Resides in the south. This most of the earth signs are related to southern direction. Grains and fire in hand. Yeah, that's the symbol. Vaishya. So this is a merchant class or caste, which makes sense because again, Virgos tend to be, again, material or tangibly oriented, practical. So, taking like their handicrafts and making some business out of it makes sense because they would be able to handle all the details and the organization that's needed for that. Variegated. So maybe because it's a dual sign, I wasn't sure about this. The element is air. We talked about that. So virgin, we talked about that. Also, tamoguni. That word came up and it means irascible. I have a feeling that's because, again, Virgo can be sensitive because they sort of like and need to potentially structure and are sensitive and detail oriented. They might seem irascible because, again, they're just more sensitive than a lot of other folks are. And I mentioned when I went through the Gemini constellation that Geminis are also very sensitive because, again, they're both of their ruling planets are Mercury. There's also in the BPH it says childlike nature. So again, that gets to that idea of like kind of an innocent, naive type person potentially. Not always. I've seen a lot of Virgos who are quite manipulative, you know, um, and some of them have been really nasty. Actually, I believe Hitler. Actually, Hitler, I believe, is a Virgo rising in Vedic astrology. But again, what he did was he took that kind of cleansing, purification energy, and he extended it to like ethnic cleansing and stuff like that. So yeah, I was really shocked when I was like, Virgo, Hitler, what? Yeah, it's kind of a wild chart to look at if you ever get into that. So then from the Phala we have truthful, speaks kindness. So again, this is the soft nature, the innocent nature, eyes full of bashfulness, again, shy, potentially immediately liked by others. I have a question mark here. This might be because they're well mannered, like they're not wild and crazy. Like they're gonna be quiet and well organized and on time, and maybe that's makes them likable. I don't know. Well versed in Shastra. So again, classical learning, higher learning. Take advantage of other people's houses and wealth. So I have a big question mark here. I'm not exactly sure why that may be true. Maybe because Mars rules the eighth house of other people's money, and Mars can represent things like thievery. I don't know about that. Yeah, that was a big question mark for me. Then his arms and shoulders will be drooped. This may be because, again, Mercury as a planet symbolizes hands, arms, sort of thing. So maybe because they're ruled by Mercury, it may be that they are active, with their hands, especially like if they have a hasta nakshatra placements and things like that. That's the ruling nakshatra for the chart. And then again, we'll have few suns. So we have a few different levels. Typically, Virgos don't have many children, but again, it depends, right? Um, maybe they have partners who are water signs or something. Water signs tend to be more interested or sort of have a natural proclivity to have more children. But anyway, again, this is a first pass. Just, if somebody says I'm a Virgo rising in my Vedic chart, these are some of the things you might consider. Again, I wouldn't take these as like set in stone by any means. You really have to consider everything in the chart, but just as a first pass. Okay, and then we have here kind of an environmental symbolism for Virgo. So the method of rising, I mentioned it was head rising or Shirshodaya. That's auspicious. What that means is if you have, natural benefic planets in Virgo, they'll become more benefic. And yeah, so that's kind of nice. It's like a little bonus boost. The direction again associated with Virgo is south. The element is earth. Now, different places. So land with water and cultivated vegetation. So again, there's organization here, right, with water. So um, either there's structured water or maybe there's a canal or something, but cultivated vegetation, like somebody's put an effort to nurture, right, and organize the vegetables or the plants or whatever. Frequented by artists or women. I don't know why women is on this list, but it's on the list. Maybe because of the maiden symbol, maybe because it's also an even Rashi. Artisans, again, that's Mercury, hands and arms, tangible, practical, worldly outcomes. Gardens and cornfields. So again, these are cultivated spaces, right? It's not like some wild forest or, rainforest jungle type place that's, wild and treacherous. I mean, right? And then we have granaries, pantries. So again, food, storage, like that weed and the maiden's hand. Now, some of this sounds like Taurus, okay? Because Taurus is sort of similar, because Taurus brings up things like, agriculture and things like that. This one seems to be a little more contained, kind of like Virgo. So yeah, rented rooms, again, this is like, kind of smaller, more contained spaces. Bookshelves, again, organization. I would assume libraries as well. And then the other thing, like medical boxes. So again, healing, nurturing, rescuing, getting to a better place. Like when you give medicine to somebody, you're basically trying to create order out of the chaos in their body or mind or spirit or whatever. Again, the south wall, south direction, ground or below ground. So again, all these places, what they have in common is that they're organized in some way. They're nurturing and also like tangible, right? I mean, they're not like you know, uncharted territory like Aries. And they're not like city dwellings like Gemini, right? They're fairly contained and also, again, fairly small, um, organized, kind of places here. Okay, so as always, thanks so much for stopping by, listening to one of my talks. Again, all of my teaching videos are in my concepts playlist. They can be found there. If you're interested in more famous bird charts, I check out my bird chart archive list 2024 video for the time being until I get the new 2025 headed out. I do offer personal bird chart readings. If that's interesting to you, you can email heartlightastro@yahoo.com for more info. I do those live on Zoom as pre-recorded video, and then I offer gift certificates as well. I do have another YouTube channel on natural medicine where I discuss Ayurveda, traditional Indian medicine, yoga, homeopathy, and naturopathic medicine. The name of that channel is Nature Source Care, so that's out there too. So, as always, I hope you found this talk helpful, useful, and interesting to you as you learn to navigate the energy cycles of your own life. All right, so take good care. Until the next one, namaste.